topic is impacting change in group homes in the disability sector.
So I'm going to start and try and set the scene and explain what this research was about and a bit of what we found, and then Scott and Kathy are going to talk about the impact that this research has had within their particular organisations and how we've worked together. So as you can see, over 17,000 people with intellectual disabilities live in group homes, which are small group homes of 4 to 6 people. And the early research that we did uncovered that the quality of support and care in those houses is pretty poor and is very variable. Some people were being occupied or engaged in meaningful activity for less than 3 minutes in every hour. You try doing that. It's not a good way to live. Active support is an internationally recognised best practice, which was introduced into Australia from the UK. And many organisations that we've worked with have said that they've adopted active support, but it's been very difficult to embed in services so that staff consistently use this practice. And our sort of practice wisdom says that there's lots of things that influence how you embed good practice within organisations. It's training, recruitment, management practice. There's lots of ideas about what you need to make the practice better. So what our research set out to do was to try and understand what were the main factors that were associated with providing good active support in group homes at the organisational level. I just want to show you a very short clip to give you a sort of orientation to the people we're talking about and what good practice looks like. Okay, so that gives you a sense of the level of severity of some of the people that live in group homes and the support that they need to be engaged in everyday activities that makes the difference to their quality of life. So since, in this particular study, since 2009, we've been collecting data about the quality of support using observational methods in group homes, collecting data about the staff and collecting data about the way these organisations manage the provision of support. The number of organisations have increased. We started with 4 and now we've got 14 organisations across 4 states that are involved in this study. And over this time we've taken repeated measures in group homes, in 51 group homes for between 2 and 7 years, so we've got longitudinal data. We've also compiled a large cross-sectional data set which is now comprised of 226 group homes which are managed by 14 organisations, and this helps us understand what are the factors that are associated with having high levels of support. We've also, through the qualitative work around understanding organisations, processes and how they operate, we've conceptualised and then turned into categories key organisational elements and compared these across organisations, and that's allowed us then to put that into some fairly complex statistical modelling to try and identify what are the factors that predict active support. And this is what we've found. If you can't read it, the poster's over there. Basically what we've found across all of those different data sets, that practice leadership of practice by of frontline practice by a supervisor or a practice leader or a frontline manager is the key to getting good support from staff. Staff need to be supervised and led in their practice, and that comes out whichever way you look at it. We've found other factors too, which are around the training of staff, which was fairly self-evident, but we've now sort of proved that, about the size of group homes, so group homes that are smaller, at less than 6, it's much easier to embed good practice in those. The association between staff having a positive view of management is a very important factor. And finally, the overarching strength of the organisation itself and its focus on practice. So the leadership in organisations and the focus they have about worrying about how they provide good practice is a very key element. So what we've found over the years that we've been doing this research is that more organisations, and you can see from this graph, are now doing good active support. So the number of organisations that have more than 50% of their group homes with a high level of active support has increased substantially, which is a major achievement, we think, compared to what it was before. The red is poor practice, The green is more than 75% of homes, and the blue is over 50% of homes. So you can see how that's changed over the years. We've also, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the organisations that have worked with us have changed quite substantially in some instances the way in which they do their business in response to the findings that we've given them, and we've given them annual findings every year. And I guess the other factor is that we've made training much more accessible. So we developed with one of our other partners some online training resources, and you saw a clip from there, which the site, which is called Every Moment Has Potential, is now visited by something like 10,000 visitors a month, and has been embedded into the training systems of many organisations, both in Australia and in the States. So I'm going to hand over to Scott and Kathy, and ask them, maybe Scott could start and just talk a little bit about the challenges of delivering good support in your organisation and the impact that some of this research has had on you and your organisation.
Okay, I'll start off then. Thanks, Chris. As Chris said, I'm with House with No Steps, and we're a large disability provider from Townsville up North Queensland right through New South Wales and the ACT, and as far south and east as Lakes Entrance here in Victoria. And we provide disability support across hundreds and hundreds of sites to thousands of people. And we really value this project and being able to be a part of and use research because we're just facing so many changes. Over the last 150 years and more recently the 20 years, we've evolved a long way around the rights of people with disabilities. And we rely on research to keep us honest, to give us a focus, especially at this time when we're dealing with a new scheme that is nationalised and provides more support, more dollars, but in a very different way, in a market environment rather than a block-funded way. So for us, our size is a challenge. We can't know every person that works for us or what happens in every home or site at all hours of the day. We must rely on good systems, a good culture and good practice and evidence. So what the other challenge that we have is that we do some really good work and we see that all the time, but we are very patchy. And the ability to be able to focus on a concept, and in this instance is active support. So we've been able to focus on active support, have a language that's understood across the organisation and develop that across the organisation, which has allowed us to create new roles and focus on what practice is. And it might sound silly, but we never had a language of practice in disability before. We've had carers, we've had support workers, and the concept of practice has probably been more clinical and something that allied health and health services had. And so it's been able to introduce that level of professionalism, but to be able to have a lightning rod, if you like, about what practice is, and then be able to show staff how to do it, and then be able to congratulate people and see the benefits that has across our services.
Yeah, look, that was fairly comprehensive. I think we probably have similar experiences with Unison. We're a disability that supports predominantly people with an intellectual disability. We have a focus on group homes. We have 40 group homes. And I guess we could say that our challenges also are around some geographical spread. And I think that prior to becoming engaged in the research, I think we always focused very much on training DSPs, and that we thought that if we provided, training to DSPs, provided them with the information, gave them the theory, that things would change. The impact that it's had for us is it's really allowed us to become aware of the fact that practice leadership is in fact probably even more important in terms of how people are supported, so that really with classroom training, nothing much changes. people go away and they're all very excited about what they've heard, and it's a bit of a, aha moment and the light bulb goes off, but really they go back into group homes and they do much of what they've always done before. So this, being involved in the research, has really allowed us to focus on our practice leadership. It's made us really aware of the importance of practice leadership and how we support people to become good leaders around practice. So really supporting DSPs to know what good work, good support looks like, being able to name it, being able to describe it, is vitally important, because we say that people need to understand what they're doing well to do more of it. And so that's been a really, I guess, one of the most impactful things for our organisation. We've also restructured. So a couple of years ago, we did look at our structure and we decided that we would take two of our senior operational leaders, one which was myself and a colleague. We'd been senior operational managers for quite some time with Unison. I think for me it was around 18, 19 years. And we decided that we would invest our years of experience and our involvement in the research project to be a senior practice leader. So I'm able to influence not only teams and DSPs and team leaders, but I can also influence up. And so for that, I guess one of the biggest changes has been around the fact that we include active support in our strategic plan, and of course then it filters down to our operational plan and into teams. So it's that emergence, I guess, of active support and the language being filtered up and filtered down. That's really had a huge impact, I think.
Scott, do you want to talk a bit about how the training resources have been used in your organisation?
Training, of course, is key, and especially when we're so spread out. So we might have small groups of staff that are 3 or 4 hours drive away from any other centre. So it's not practical to be able to bring people together. We're certainly not funded for training specifically, so we don't have the resources to be able to spend many hours or days in the training that's required. So be able to have online videos, coaching, that are very easy to follow, very natural, and able so that people can go back to it and absorb it at their own pace. That's been really beneficial in that training way.
So Kathy, we had a conversation the other day about, do you think there's been any impact beyond the organisation from this study?
I mean, in terms of partnerships, I mean, we did some really great work with Greystanes, and that was I think what was great about it was that we all acknowledged that we were on a journey and that it was quite difficult, and that what we've seen is organisations, I guess, sharing some of their challenges, what the barriers are to embedding active support. Sometimes I felt that it was a little bit difficult to connect because we had different sized organisations with perhaps different numbers of group homes, and so therefore is it easier to embed in an organisation that has 8 group homes versus an organisation that has 40? But I guess in reflection, the approaches need to be the same. And so I think it was hearing what other people were having difficulty with, hearing what other people were trying, and deciding then whether it was something that we thought would help our organisation. So yeah, it has been a journey. I think that's the learning, I think, for all of us involved in the research.
So just to finish, have we got a minute to finish? Or there we go. So Scott, do you want to talk about what's the experience been like of being part of this research? What would you say to others?
Look, it's fantastic. I mean, I think to be able to partner with a university and do some really long-term research and gather the evidence, and really, I know we're looking to influence the NDIS and the way the sector is, because at the moment we are commoditising disability support and looking at an insurance model where really it's getting down to the basic amount of hours required that may get funded, which in itself is a great development. However, the risk of that is that we lose quality and it's a race to the bottom. And people that are very vulnerable have significant complex support requirements. we can't provide the necessary support and training and development that we need to put into our workforce. So that's a big issue for us as a sector. So to be able to actually work long term with a group of like-minded professionals, gather the evidence that is pretty conclusive, and then be able to build on that has been fantastic. For our organisation, it means, again, we've, the same as Kathy, we've restructured, we've put practice back in our lexicon. Previously, we were probably more of a deficit model. We'd look at the financials first, we'd look at the risk management, we'd look at the incident responses, and if we were lucky, we'd look at workforce. So now we're actually saying that if we follow the principles of active support, not only do we get a better quality of life outcome for the individual, we also get more engaged staff, and that we can also more accurately measure the performance of the organisation, and then be able to represent that back to our funders as good value for money.
Thanks. Kathy, do you want to say anything to finish off?
Look, I think I have to say, like, just from a personal level and from an organisational level, we have absolutely loved being involved in it. For me, it's been enormously satisfying because we have made some inroads in terms of improving the levels of engagement of support for people with a disability. And I think probably the biggest challenge that we face moving forward is the NDIS and the fact that we will have challenges around funding, and will we be able to really focus on quality will be those challenges. But I think if we move forward and we're clever, and I think this is the issue, is that we don't make it a big deal. I think that how we support people just needs to be the first thing that we think about. And I think that the research here gives us such a great framework that we shouldn't have to be rethinking it all the time. It's here. And so I think if we move forward with that, then it should be, while it will be challenging, I don't see that that it can't be done. So I move forward with some really positive thoughts, I think, in terms of what the future holds.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming, both of you, and we might leave it there. Thank you.
We do have 2 more minutes, which is great. I would just like to ask one more question, just that people might be interested, how you all got together, because was Chris sort of, saying, be part of my research project? Tell us a bit about that, how you got together.
Look, I just know Gail Geltis, who is my supervisor, who was also going to be here today. I think she was at a function for La Trobe, and she actually approached Chris and wanted to be part of the research because in its title it said embedding person-centred active support. And so we had been on a journey for 7 or 8 years prior to being involved in the research and really weren't having any luck for a whole range of reasons. So for us it was really about pick us. So I don't know what your experience was, but we were more than happy to be involved and quite eager.
Similar for us, I think La Trobe has a great reputation and is a leader in the disability sector in terms of research. So it's that relationship that and awareness that we had with Christine and her team. And then when we heard it was there, we just went, same thing. Yeah, we want to be a part of that. So we've come on in the last 3 years rather than the original group, and it was because of the sharing of that information and the reputation that the piece of research and other research was having. We wanted to be a part of it.
And I spend a lot of time going around trying to inveigle people to be part of our research. And I think that reinforces the fact that, partnerships are about building relationships and about putting the work that we're doing out there so that people can see it. And people come across it in all sorts of different ways, often not through the academic paper, but through speaking at a conference or seeing something online or a tweet or whatever. So, yeah, it comes about in funny ways. Thank you.
Fantastic presentation. Thank you very much.